Hello people. I'm wanting to do a range of videos on the concept of false forgiveness or forgiveness without contrition. Forgiveness without accountability is another way of saying it. The first one I did, which I think handles the concept very well anyway, is one on Stefan Molyneux, his summary of the concept. And then yesterday I did a video on the sociological aspects of this, on reasons why people might want to encourage forgiveness without contrition as a legitimate philosophical outlook. There are a few different areas I might want to come at this from, so I might want to look at what's the inconsistency in the energies in doing that. I have to look at the biblical perspective, and I wanted to look at the law of one and what they say about that whole process. But before I do, I wanted to say, what am I replacing it with? That's very, very important. Like, what do I think is the correct processing that eventually leads us to be more at peace? There is another video I need to do on a related concept, and this is on the different ways that people fundamentally are, the different energies they are, as talked about in the law of one. And this is that people are either wisdom, love, or power. And I definitely need to do that because it has a large bearing on this discussion, I think at least. But I just wanted to jump in with an idea of how I see things getting processed. And one thing that I think is interesting is that when you look at the transits, you manage to kind of place emotions in their proper context, or you place the thing you're having difficulty with onto the correct transits. You tend to gain insight into it in that way, and it gives you a lot of insight because of course it relates to the past and the future. If you're talking about the transit of Neptune 20 years ago, then you can watch Neptune as it continued and as it's manifesting today, and you can see how that same behavior from 20 years ago might be reflecting in someone's life today. So it gives you an almost karmic perspective sometimes. And I want to talk about, just briefly here, as a bit of a side note, one of the recent insights and experiences I had that gave me a question on this whole area. And the question is, how much control over our emotions do we really have? Like, on the deeper level, if I am angry at someone, there's no change in the relationship, and I say I forgive them, how do I know that I have the willpower, or even that it's possible, to just blank that emotion out? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, if you're angry at someone every day of your life, then you say, oh, I forgive that person. Does that stop you being angry, or is the anger something that we can't really control because it comes down to deeper things? And I had that experience recently when I was playing music. Now, music to me is a very powerful modality for accessing my emotions. And this case was exactly that. I got out all my songs recently. It's been a while. I looked over a lot of them. I've added some to some of them now. But there was a song that I wrote while I was in the first office job. If you've seen my Noticing Patterns video, where I go through my basic biography type of thing. And it's a strange song because it's got an absolutely beautiful melody. The melody is a bit breathtaking. It's like, it's up on the 5th fret, I think, and it's just kind of fantastic. But the words are nasty. It's not swearing, but it's almost swearing. So it gives you a bit of a kind of shock, a bit of an unpleasant sensation when you listen to it, when you moved into this beautiful melody and then, you know, this hard talk. But what it was about how much I disliked the women there that I think I can define this quite well as having bullied me in a sense. So it'd be really weird. I've already been through this, but it'd be really weird. It's like when you meet someone new, they're nice to you for a while, but then they refuse to talk to you because they've been told by everyone else in the office not to do it. But while I was playing that, all of the emotion from that period came back. But I haven't thought about them in years. Like, I might have mentioned them in that video, but I haven't, to my knowledge anyway, thought about them. And I definitely haven't had that emotion. When I think about it normally, it's just like, oh, it's a thing that happened. And it gives you that idea of how much control over our own emotions do we have, especially if we're only able to access them. It's almost like having to use a code, like to have to play a piece of music to access a specific emotion. But yeah, anyway, so I had a friendship with somebody who had the 4130 channel, and the emotional definition was a big part of the entire being of this person, as it would be with anyone that's emotionally defined. And just recently I looked at the Saturn transit. The Saturn transit was going over here, gate 41, then it was going over to gate 19, then to gate 13, then to gate 30. And when it hit gate 30, soon after, all hell broke loose. And this was a big insight for me. The reason it was a big insight for me was because when crazy things happen and you need to put things together in a puzzle, you are relying in a certain degree to little hints you've picked up, but you don't know which ones are significant and which ones are not. And this specific set of transits explains something about what was happening within her. It's not a nice truth, and I think when you're doing that kind of thing, when you're having those sorts of insights, very often the truths aren't that nice. And this is something that might relate to what I was saying earlier about the different ways people process. Maybe some people don't want to look at the insights that aren't nice. I remember watching the backstage discussion of the third Bourne film, I think it was. And it said that one of the producers or writers or something said that Bourne is going to have to discover a secret about his past, but it's not going to be a nice secret. It's not going to be something that actually solves anything. It's going to be something generally nasty and that doesn't really fit. And that is what those insights are like sometimes. But in order to understand these things in the larger context they sit in, it's good to have these insights and to properly assign them to the right place. I know what Saturn meant in this circumstance. I know what that then means. For instance, when Saturn shows up, if it is showing up and it's correlating with a certain area of someone's life, they may be receiving karma in that area. So you are watching them receive karma. And like I said, Saturn's going to move forwards, and Saturn was further back at one point, and all these themes tend to connect. Eventually, like I said with the Neptune example, this massive story that includes all these working parts, you may see things happen in the real world that answer to the crimes that other people have done. And then that little packet of emotion that is stored away, some part of your self, that can be accessed and that can be solved. And so that's all I have for the moment, and thank you for listening.